Hello, everyone, and welcome to one of the final October series conversations from Hacking HR. Today, we will be talking about beyond traditional performance management. And more exactly, we will be looking into ways to create a high performing organizations with AI. My name is Minola Jacques. I will be your co host for the next hour or so. We have Jessa working her magic backstage, and we have an amazing lineup of speakers that I am sure are very impatient to get on the screen. So, Jessa, if you can bring them on. In the meantime, I will say yet again, welcome everyone, and I hope you enjoy a great whatever moment it is on your time zones as you listen to us. I see people already popping up comments, so thank you. Keep those comments coming. At least let us know where you're listening or watching us from, and help us travel vicariously around the world. But also, as we will move forward with our conversation, I cannot invite you warmly enough to use the chat generously. Do drop your questions, do drop your insights, your ideas, your comments, because you will do an amazing work of helping this community learn from each other. It doesn't matter what we are talking about. We are always fascinated to see so many nuances across geographies, across cultures, across generations, across industries, however you want to slice and dice our audience. It's always a great learning experience. I will stop my intro blabathon right here because this is your space for the conversation. So it's wonderful to see you on my screen, and let's make the most out of our time here today. So, what I will do, I will pop the e-mic around clockwise, and I will ask you to first shortly introduce yourselves, and do let us know what is the specific lens that you bring into our conversation today. So, Fabrizio, welcome. Good to see you.
Thank you so much, Minola. Hello, everyone. Great to be here. Hello to my fellow panelists. I am currently working at Hive Learning as Chief Product Officer, which is a very exciting venture. It's been around for quite a few years in the learning space, and its main investors is a venture builder for whom I work, Blam Chalcott. So I'm involved with a number of different AI-led initiatives. I've been in the educational space for pretty much all of my career, and working with technology, and now sort of building some really cool AI powered products. So yeah, hopefully I can bring a bit of a blend of my experience from how the education world has been evolving over the last sort of 20 or so years, and how AI is transforming it now.
Wonderful. Thank you so very much. Didier, welcome on our screens.
Hello, thank you very much, Mina, for the warm welcome, and indeed hi to our fellow panelists. So, well, first of all, it's a pleasure to be here. What I bring to the table today, it is more background of data scientist. So during the last 2 decades, I've been a data scientist involved in data manipulation, construction of AI systems at different type of level, from young quantitative analyst to chief data AI officer for FTSE 250 company. So today it is for me a balancing act, actually, acting not only as a data scientist, but as well as a CEO and founder of Alphamatica, where Alphamatica provides services and advisory services for companies related to tech, AI, and data.
Thank you so very much. Jason, good to see you.
Hey, good to see you, Manola. Welcome, panelists and everyone around the world. Jason Rosoli coming to you from New Jersey, United States. Roughly 25 years of people operations experience, human resource experience throughout many Fortune 500 companies in my career. Most recently, I've been doing consulting with many large companies on performance management and union avoidance, as well as my own company, Grassroots Talent, which does headhunting, searching within the blue collar spectrum primarily. So looking forward to the discussion today.
Thank you. And Megan, good to see you again. Welcome.
Hi, Manola. Hi, everyone. Fabulous to be here. So I'm dialing in from just across the river from Jason over in New York City. I'm a talent management consultant with an emphasis on performance management and change management. I love performance management, and I feel like I've seen it all. I've led processes to remove ratings. I've re-implemented ratings, even talking about the cadence. I really believe that there's so much opportunity for performance management in the workplace. So really excited for this conversation and to learn from my fellow panelists.
Thank you all very much for taking the time and the energy and the curiosity to be here in this conversation space. And I was thinking, maybe before we dive into AI, and I know that AI instantly polarizes people into huge enthusiasm or infinite anxiety. So before we bring AI into the conversation, I was thinking, how about we create a little bit the context for thinking about performance management in our reality today. I remember about a year and a half ago on another Hacking HR panel, we had an amazing conversation around how performance management has changed and how COVID accelerated a lot of changes that had already been in the works prior to 2020. And we raised questions that are still, going strong today, like what is work? And how do we define work? How do we recognize good work? What is visible work, especially with the hybrid remote and all the setups that we navigate today? How is, the gig economy impacting how we define performance management? What is equitable and fair in performance management today? So just a few thoughts out there. I would be very curious to hear from you. What are some of the big trends that you see in performance management today, and maybe some subtle undercurrents that could bring aha moments for our audience? And I will give you a few seconds to think about. This will officially start the unmuting competition, so I will let people come into the conversation as inspiration strikes. And before we get this question, I will just anticipate it. This is being recorded, so don't worry if you miss out on any gold nuggets. You can always go back and re-listen on the same link just as soon as the live streaming is done. So, the world of performance management. What are you seeing and what are you feeling that people should pay attention to?
But I can go first. I think it's been quite an elusive goal, right? I think all of us here have plenty of experience managing performance or helping improve performance or analyzing or measuring performance. And I think that's the biggest challenge, is like, how do you measure performance? You can do that if you've got a, perhaps on a manufacturing operation, you can visualize that a bit more clearly. But as the world moved to this kind of information society where information workers are creating a lot of value through the work that they do from home, from the office, via emails, via PowerPoint decks, it's very hard to measure. It becomes very hard to measure. And I think this is the hope that the latest advancement in artificial intelligence allows us to make sense of these inputs that can correlate with performance. Right. I think there's also an element of how do you measure performance? Are you measuring performance in the short term? Are you measuring performance in the long term? And the longer term it becomes, the harder it becomes to measure. I think the hope, and Didier, maybe you can add a bit more technical color to it. The hope is that we can identify patterns that represent good performance, and then be able to sort of feed that back into the system. So some of the things that we've been experimenting and working with is in analyzing how sales teams, for example, manage their pipeline and how they perform in their sales calls, to be able to provide back that context of the things that they could do better from a coaching perspective, for example. So I think these are some of the things that are starting to emerge, and there's a lot of experiments going on with that. So yeah, happy to hand over to you.
Yeah,
Well, Didier, you were volunteered by Fabrizio to.
And I welcome the challenge. Thank you very much, Fabrizio. Well, I think there is two dimensions here. So first of all, we have to keep the good thing that have been in life during the last more than 2,000 years. So everybody actually have a view, and actually leveraging the feedback of our colleague, our partner, our counterpart. I think this should be all the time considered. Of course, we are in a digital world where we have so many interactions can be captured, and we can translate actually this binary point in reflection, in feedback. So I think this is the novelty of where we are. But the combination, I will say, of the two, the digital aspect, the digital footprint, everything related to that can be digested by AI, any kind of system, with, I will say, with the human in the loop, it is probably the combination that we can do and leverage. We need to be careful to not fall on the trap or AI will fix everything. We are human. We are, I will say, we need to celebrate this humanity, and AI is just a tool, not a dictator that will drive our behavior.
I'll go on, Megan.
I'll chime in. I like, Manola, how you asked the question, like, how has performance management changed? And my first reaction was, has it? And I say that because there's so many organizations that are still doing performance management the way it looked 5-10 years ago. And so I think like there's some pockets where companies are experimenting with different approaches and even just philosophically challenging what is the purpose of performance management, for knowledge workers or in today's world of working. Like, is it truly measuring performance? Is it we're doing this process as a mechanism to identify up and coming talent, or we have to have this process as a way of differentiating how we pay people? And so, so many organizations that I talk to are still doing things on a once a year or maybe twice a year cadence, and it looks the same. It's a self-review, it's peer feedback, it's a manager review. But then every now and then I talk to somebody who's starting to experiment with things like organizational network analysis, or looking at, what does continuous conversations look like, or even just challenging the cycle. Like I spoke with an organization that rather than, everything laddering back to a Jan 1st date to back into comp, they've kind of structured things where it allows flexibility for the various business functions to orchestrate a cycle based on their talent rhythms. So it's a long way of saying, like, I think for many that are probably on this call, performance management hasn't changed, but then there are some emerging front runners that are kind of showcasing opportunities to really relook at how we do this.
So I agree completely, Megan. I was going to actually mention before about test and learn, and I like how you brought up about testing the waters on different things, and that's where I think every company should be pushing their associates to test and learn new things. Actually, the KPIs that I had on my team when I had a very large team that worked for me up to my most recent positions, part of their OKRs every quarter was how to better streamline their own job. One thing in order to improve the efficiency of themselves, to improve the efficiency of the entire organization. So testing and learning. The other thing I want to go back to what Fabrizio and Didier were mentioning on analytics a little bit was predictive analytics. I think we have an amazing opportunity with AI in order to get more and more into using past data in order to predict future data and future outcomes. So I think that's a huge opportunity of where we're going with this. I actually did a lot of that when I was at one of my most recent employers. doing predictive analytics within the hiring process based on experiences of top talent within the organization, and also tying it back to also retention information. So, and I don't think it's something that's just an employee solve regarding performance management, but I think it's employees on how they're implementing this into product lines as well. Predictive analytics. So again, products notifying customers and or manufacturers of future breakdowns before they happen based on predicted the AIs that are built within these products. So again, take the example of a refrigerator. If a refrigerator is overheating, it can notify a manufacturer, dispatch a service professional to your home before it even breaks down. Okay, or same thing goes to a car. So, how are employees implementing this into products? Okay, as well within companies, not so from to help improve efficiencies of a company. So, there's a lot to be learned, but it all goes back to what my original point was: is test and learn, right? So, little bites of where we can implement what's working, what's not working. If it's working, let's dive in deeper. If it's not working, let's move to something else and be agile from that perspective.
Mm. Well, a lot of conversation candies you dropped in this round alone. So I will come back and collect on many of them. And I will start with Megan. I would be very, very curious to learn more about looking at how companies have changed and looking at the space of where companies can develop into. Where do you see AI making most difference?
I mean, to only pick one. I think what I'm most excited about where AI has the opportunity to impact performance management is that real-time feedback component, and tying on to what Jason said around like proactive talent management. So that those data, those insights, those just-in-time nudges, that just-in-time coaching. Maybe it's the AI bot that's sitting in the corner of my screen and it gives me immediate feedback on a presentation that I gave. So that those real-time insights to help versus classically what we see where maybe the feedback isn't given in a manner that employees or leaders can recognize it as being feedback. And then inevitably on an engagement survey, the question around, I'm satisfied with the amount of feedback that I get. It's like, no, I never get any feedback. I don't know how I'm doing. And so again, just like that real-time feedback. As an example, I'm an avid runner. And so I'm obsessed with my Strava app. And Strava is for more than just runners. It's any sports. But they just came out with their AI beta insights. And so I noticed after going for a run, it popped up with some insights and it just looked at the last 30 days of my running and gave me some trend data. It's also very encouraging. It's like, good job, way to get out there. Strongest run in a month. And so like just things like that, in my personal life, like how does that carry over into the professional life of that just-in-time feedback, nudges, encouragement can go a long way.
I saw a lot of enthusiastic nodding across the screen. So Didier, would you like to give it a go?
Yeah, I would say, if we continue this example, of having some feedback, automatic feedback, regardless actually the different type of activity we are doing, if it's running, doing a presentation, doing an email, and as well leading a team. I think the beauty of AI here, it is a tool to accelerate our self-reflection. Before the time of and the duration of cycle was probably longer, but now with this kind of technology, we have the opportunity to reflect faster. It's literally an invitation to self-reflect, to think about our performances, and understand nicely and quietly, introspectively, how we can improve going forward. So this is just a tool what is important is this internal mechanism that we can accelerate it with this kind of feedback and information that before we never had.
Jason.
Yeah, I think looking within a company, the opportunities for AI are vast, right? To Megan's original point is like where can it be implemented, right? So there's definitely the low-hanging fruit within the people ops, operations, human resources spaces of recruiting where it's been implemented, and comp and benefits for job descriptions and job posting writing, all those simple things, within the data side. But I mean, within finance, right? AI is soon to be implemented that it's going to be able to take over the finance calculations of a company, operationally determine just-in-time inventory for supply and demand, and marketing, hopefully take over Google, okay, and monetize the AI bots that are out there in order to break up the monopoly of Google and determine what's the best, most efficient way to go to market and market your product at the cheapest cost. Through multiple platforms, not just Google. So I think there's a vast opportunity within AI within a corporation. And then again, going back to customized learning, like Megan was talking about. So it just goes on and on. I think what has to be determined are the controls around it, right? The safeguards for employee privacy and so forth. But the adoption is the key. Are people going to adopt it and embrace it as positive change, or are they going to fight it and resist it? And I know I'm rambling, but I'm from New Jersey, so people know that. That's why. But I deal with a lot of unions, and unions are very resistant to change, right? They don't want autonomous vehicles in the state of California. The Teamsters union is fighting that to have trucking being done by robots or autonomous, no driver. The labor international longshoremen are fighting against cargo. Because they don't want to turn into China where all the cargo ships are unloaded by robots. So again, are you going to adopt this stuff, or are you going to fight this stuff moving forward? So I think that's one of the biggest challenges is the safeguards.
Fabrizio, what would you add?
As a lot's been said there, I think there's two general themes. There is the doing better what was already possible, and this is kind of a lot of the cases that we're seeing is like, hey, we can do this. Some of the examples that Jason mentioned, some of the other examples that I mentioned, like you can do it better now because it's cheaper, it's more accessible by AI. But there are also the things that we can do now that were unthinkable. Right? You wouldn't think as a business, you wouldn't think about coaching everybody in your organization because you're talking about hundreds or thousands of people. We had a very successful program that we rolled out earlier this year with one of our coaching tools in a pilot program where we had 800 leaders. This is a global professional services business, 800 leaders that had the opportunity to go and practice on how to give performance feedback to an underperforming person that reports to them, for example. So, and they could go and they could practice as many times as they wanted, and they were getting feedback on that, obviously within a particular framework that the organization uses. And that kind of level of practice and coaching was just not possible, a couple of years ago. And now you can have that, which means the speed. And I think that's one of the things that, Megan and Jason, DJ were alluding to, that the speed at which we can do things, it just multiplies to a level that we just weren't expecting. So that continuous feedback, that day to day, I need to have a conversation with someone in my team who's having trouble with a particular aspect of their work. I can go and practice before that, just in time, and I can turn up to that meeting and make it a lot more productive. Now, this wasn't possible because you couldn't give a human experienced coach to each person in your organization. And now we're unlocking all these different things. That's why, it's hard to foresee everything that's going to land, but I think there's lots of exciting opportunities there, and we're already seeing some of the results that that's bringing.
I love this dreamy, realistic energy that you all had in your answers. And Didier, I'm going to ask you to be the pioneer for the next round. And I will go back to one of your very, very early statements where you called out the pitfall of thinking that AI will fix everything. So building a little bit on that, if we could take a few minutes to look into what are some of the misassumptions, what are some of the misuses or the misexpectations from AI that we see around us. And there's a bit of a twist for extra points. I know that business ethics is something very near and dear to your heart. Are there any ethics callouts that we want to expressively make today?
Okay, so I think we raised this question about adoption, and in order to facilitate the adoption, using this technology as a real tool of personal development, organizational development, putting a framework that will facilitate this adoption is very, very important. And I will say, go back to the point, the importance of the human in the loop on the system, I think this is very critical. In some aspect, yes, it's indeed. Now we have a technology to have a one-to-one real-time coach, and Fabrizio clearly mentioned this. We can have the LLM, we can set up some LLM as clearly as a coach if you define and ask him to behave like a specific coach in speech, in for example mathematics. You can use LLM as an agent. So this is how we say for real time. So that's amazing opportunity. But in the same time, if, for example, we just go full automated, we are clearly at risk to want to be fully rejected and to not use this fantastic opportunity as a tool. So having human in the loop, I will say that's very, very important to facilitate the adoption. Number two, it is to be very transparent. So we need to be explicit about what kind of data we are using in order to make a recommendation. Without this kind of transparency and clarity about the origin of the data, you cannot establish trust of the outcome and then on the recommendation. And lastly, but this is more corporate culture, it is clearly we want to use this tool not as a tool of, I would say, on the negative way, like a stick, but more kind of a tool to facilitate the growth mindset and the career development. So we need to really, really be careful about this dimension in order to be sure that we adopt this new technology for the good and for the development not only of the individual, but as well of the organization.
Maybe just before we move forward, I just want to make sure that everybody on the call has the same subtitles to the acronyms. So LLM stands for Large Language Models. We all struggle with acronyms in our own unique way. So just making sure that when we use them, they also come with a short explanation. So thank you for the few extra seconds. Who would like to go next? Megan, shall we go in diagonal and then we will?
Sure. As we were talking, going back to the importance of speed, agility, real-time, feedback, it was reminding me of an organization that I worked for where we were encouraged throughout the year to send positive or constructive feedback to our peer. And when I first joined the organization, my thought process was, oh, does this mean that on a quarterly, annual basis, the system is going to summarize all the comments to then condense it of, hey, Megan, you're always getting compliments on XYZ, and here are the themes around like what you need to work on. And so just kind of taking things like a step further in terms of what we see in today's performance management, where you're asking 3 to 5 peers for some peer feedback, and then the manager has to like synthesize, okay, what are the themes? What is the path forward? How do we make this actionable? And so just kind of looking at like the role of AI in providing more insights, but also how to do that in an unbiased manner of, again, trends, like really looking for what's the common theme? What does somebody need to know to continue to move forward?
Shall we break the pattern and go Jason and then Fabrizio?
Yeah, no, I agree that, with all the points that are being made, especially around ensuring there's not bias within the model and ensuring there's human interaction in the model, right? So there needs to be check and balances. As much as we want to push forward with automation, I'm all about it, right? Like, we wouldn't be here today on this without us evolving and adopting technology and automation. Years ago when I first started, there was in my company, when I first started my career, we were just starting off using emails, right? And there was no cell phones. And now look where we are. We're on video, right? And there's jobs that have been impacted by that, right? People have lost. There used to be a reprographics department in my building where they would literally make photocopies, and there was a person's job that was to make photocopies of stuff, right, for presentations. There's a thing called PowerPoint, and now there's stuff where we have an AI bot that's making the PowerPoint for us even. So again, we are evolving, and we need to continue to evolve. So there's skill gaps that need to be addressed. That's my point. So we have to make sure that we're addressing those skill gaps. We need to make sure that we continue to have options out there. So again, what do I mean by that? When someone calls a phone and they only get a robot or a telebot, that's giving them, press 2 for this option, press 3, giving someone an option to talk to somebody, right? That's human basic needs. That's how, and I always bring up Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? The need of belonging. So there's going to always be that human need, right, to interact, to have some level of interaction with another human within their job space somehow. And making sure that there is that human controls over the AI that is being implemented. So again, going back to my test and learn, and then making sure that there's not bias within that. So a couple different things to think about.
Yeah, I think there's a lot being said there. Didier is probably closer to, we're in the same geography, so probably familiar with the EU Act, which was issued this year, which talks specifically about it talks about the responsibility with how you're applying AI, right? And I think that care that you need to have and the responsibility with the outcome and the output is not just, hey, I built it, it's technically sound, go and use it. You have a responsibility, especially if that is impacting someone's life at a more deeper level. 100% aligned on the human in the loop policy. I think that's one of the first things that we've been championing in my teams when building AI, and particularly in the output review. You can select good data and you can apply all the best techniques and practices to build your application, but you have to extensively review the output. What is spewing out, and how is that being valued or frowned upon or rejected by your users? I think it's really important in these early stages because, like Didier said, we run the risk of alienating the technology, and then people will just reject it. The other thing that I found extremely valuable in the last sort of 18 months that we've been building these, particularly with large language models, is to do tight and focused experimenting. So just keep the experimentation very tight, because particularly large language models, LLMs, they can be a bit unpredictable. So you try to give it too much scope, it's very hard to measure what's spewing out. So keep those experiments focused and tight, with transparency to the user and your client, and make sure that there's plenty of humans there. I also love, Jason, what you said about skills. I always try to change the language about jobs will disappear. I think skills will disappear and jobs are going to continue. I always use the example of accountants who have been around for, I think, something like 7,000 or 8,000 years, right? The first accountants were using ceramic pieces to keep track of numbers, right? And now we use spreadsheets and AI and all that stuff. But the job is still there, the profession's still there. The skills need to evolve.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's painful to say we're almost 5 minutes into the second half of our time together, and I would love to take all this energy and make it a little bit more actionable for our audience. When we close this conversation, where can people start to think about how they can best harness AI for their performance management work in the companies? Is there a particular question that might orient their quest and curiosity and energy? Is there a particular slice of the HR performance management cycle or process that you would single out for a little bit of experimenting? And Jason, you and Fabrizio, you've been exchanging the hot seat of going last. So I would ask you, Jason, to lead us into this. And now, Fabrizio, you know that very soon you will go first in a future question. So, Jason, where should we start?
Yeah, I'm gonna pick up where Fabrizio left off on the point of reskilling, right? So, you know, I say there's always three peoples in this world: peoples that complain about things that happen to them. So people that are going to push against this because they're going to complain that they're going to get their job replaced. People that are just sitting back and watching it happen, okay, and waiting for what's to come next. And then people in this world that make things happen, okay. And most successful people in the world actually make things happen. So what does that mean for an individual that's in a company? That means using the technology that's there that they're scared of sometimes to benefit themselves. And by trying to get out there and reskilling themselves I absolutely love how quickly I can get answers nowadays. Instead of researching and trying to find or read a book, I literally can type in a question and have spit out an answer immediately. So how can I utilize that technology in order to make me a better job performer myself? How even if it's maybe researching training programs to reskill myself. And I'm being very, very generic because obviously we have people on that watch this that are of every different background, of every different nationality, of every different type of job that they perform. So it's made it so easy to go and find ways to reskill yourself or to improve your own skill sets. And what's to come? How might my job change because of AI? I could just type in a question and it's going to give me an answer, right? It might not be completely the right answer, but it's going to give me some sort of answer, and it's going to give me what are the recommendations of how to better prepare myself, to complement this AI technology? It's going to give me a list of things that I can do. So utilize the technology in order to upskill myself to better prepare myself for the future. So that's what I would say.
Fabrizio, I see you unmuted.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I think Jason just sort of sparked a thought here that I've been talking about a lot as well. The bar will go up very quickly. Is already happening, right? I think last year, as Jason was saying, some people were just ignoring it, just blanking it out. I said, I remember in one of these conversations, I said, you can't skip 2023. You're going to have to go through that. You can't just blank it out and expect that it never happened, because you're going to wake up one day and the bar will have gone from here to here. It's like when we introduced word processors and grammar spell checkers, right? Suddenly, no one accepts an email with like gross grammar errors and stuff, because it's not about your ability to be able to craft that, is your ability to just use a spell checker, which is right there in front of you. So the bar is going up very, very quickly. My recommendation, if you're managing performance, and this is one of the things that we do here at Blam Chalco as a group, is give people the tools and reward curiosity. If they are demonstrating curiosity and they have the tools, they're going to grow exponentially. They're going to grow, 1% every day, and they're going to get to the end of the year incredibly more productive, incredibly smarter than they started. If you're a professional, ask every question. Ask of an AI, like Jason was saying, it's cheap now. You don't need to bug your manager all the time or your colleagues all the time. Just ask the question, because that's how you're going to exercise curiosity, and you're going to evolve with the pace of the technology. I think these years that we're living through right now, they're going to be very defining for a lot of careers. And if you're sitting on the bench watching it from the sidelines, you're going to fall behind so quickly. That's going to be really hard to catch up. but it is conversely an extremely exciting opportunity to just be out there learning and spring ahead of that new performance level that is being set. Didier, I think you're.
Yeah, Fabrizio, thank you. I really like. In fact, I would like to highlight underlying paradox. So yes, as an individual, we have the opportunity to use so many tools, but there is a counter angle, I will say. It is from an organizational standpoint, if everybody use the same tool, then the overall collective creativity is at risk. And we need to be aware about this. Because if, for example, we ask roughly the same question, we have roughly the same answer, then collectively we become poorer and there is less divergent thinking. So it's amazing. This tool is amazing, but one, probably we can counter manage, I would say, the situation by using different LLM or different tools, if you want, because keep in mind, and there is a fantastic paper actually about the bias of the creator is embedded on the LLM. It's a recent paper actually. So having a diversity of tools is very important, but as well, sometimes it's good to stop and to think about ourselves to encourage actually our divergent thinking for the benefit of the organization ourselves. And on this point, it was related to a very good paper, and I invite everybody by BCG. Actually, they did it 2 years ago, I believe, that individually we become better, but we are at risk that collectively we become less creative.
Megan.
Yeah, Didier, thanks for referencing that study. I was on a different panel about a month ago, and we were talking about that, like the premise of, are you more creative than AI? And yeah, the premise being, individually, like where, ChatGPT or Gemini can help at the individual level around like creative brainstorming. But if you're in a group, the group's collective creativity is higher. So I think it comes back to, the theme of AI can't solve everything for us. And so just recognizing like when to use AI, like where are there great use cases? And so to the question, Manila, you had asked of like, where should an organization start? Maybe you start with like, what are some of the biggest pain points in human resources? Like what is work that humans are doing that could be automated? Like where could you explore, a chat bot to help employees like navigate benefits versus having to always reach out to their HR business partner, for example. So maybe just like spending some time with your HR team and whiteboarding or using like virtual sticky notes to kind of like walk through, what's work that you're doing today that you would love to not do anymore, or what's work that, could we explore solutions to automate? And so kind of recognizing where there's some pain points to explore utilizing AI. Because I think ultimately at the end of the day, like the theme that we're also talking about is like, there still needs to be a human in the room. Like there still needs to be, the press 0 to talk to a human versus getting hung up on because you can't get through an automated system, right? Like we still need that human interaction. However, there's a lot of opportunity where AI can, proactively analyze data, provide insights, provide a summary of notes from a call versus somebody having to manually type them. So I guess like the theme is, just take a look at the work today and look for some opportunities to start testing and exploring tools.
Those of you who have been listening to conversations that I had the gift of facilitating in the past, you know that sooner or later I ask this question. So now it's the moment. I do want to be very mindful of the fact that many people in our audience are living the reality of an HR function of one. So with everything that they need to take care of, and they need to develop, and they need to nurture, and they need to enable, bringing AI into performance management is, oh, okay, let's do this too. Let's squeeze this in. So I would really love to hear your thoughts. And Fabrizio, I'm going to keep myself honest on my promise to ask you to go first. How can someone who is an HR function of one, how can they best harness AI as their colleague for building performance management in the organizations?
Thanks, Manola. I think, just picking up on Megan's suggestion there, I would think about AI solutions to help you reduce your overall workload so that you have the time to do performance management as well. Because many times it becomes, it's not done frequently enough because you don't have the bandwidth, or it becomes almost like an afterthought because you're caught into, the CVs, the recruitment, all the kind of other admin work that kind of eats up on your time. So I would say go beyond, look at, explore, be curious with AI tools that can help you across the whole spectrum of jobs that you need to do. And that will create more time for you to think about what is the performance framework that you need and how you can sort of run that best in your organization, in your team. I understand, and I've worked with L&D managers, HR managers that are very, very pressurized for looking after sometimes 100 people or more, and they're a team of one, and that's incredibly challenging. So I would say you're probably spending a lot of time doing a lot of admin work that you can automate in different ways using the technology. So I would look at the whole spectrum, because performance management is something that requires that human dedication to think and plan, and then you execute using the tools, again, using AI tools that can help you.
Thank you. I know that usually Didier goes after you, but let's change things around. And Megan, would you like to go second this time?
Sure. What came to mind, so really thinking about, okay, an HR team of one, where can they really utilize some AI help in performance management process? A couple thoughts. Using AI to help design your communications. You can get it to like 90%, right? And then go in and customize. So then it's, dear ChatGPT, help create a communication plan for our upcoming performance management cycle, blah, 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 blah. Help create the overall, and then how can you automate like scheduling it to go out, so then you don't have to set a reminder on your calendar like, oh, I have to send the email to the whole company announcing this date. Use AI to create a script and slides for the training for your upcoming process. Even better, then got that done, then record it, put it on your internal website so people can watch it on demand. So just looking at like creative ways of, rather than you having to like the mental capacity of, I have to sit and think about all these different communications that are going to go out, or write a script or make slides for this training, leverage AI to get it to, again, like 90%. And then you're just doing some refining and polishing. So those would be my suggestions for a team of one.
Thank you.
Well, if we're going counterclockwise, I'll jump in. I know I agree with what Megan's saying for sure. I would just say there's definitely, besides the ChatGPT and other AI large language models that are out there, there's also softwares other companies have built. Like, again, Thomas mentioned Bamboo HR as a platform in the chat. I've used for ATS system Paradox as an ATS that does all the pre-screening and scheduling, and then I, literally push of a button, and job offers go out. So I always like the motto, work smart, not hard, right? I'm on the board of advisors for an IAI company called Wayside that they do all the benefits and HR process bots. So so like Megan was mentioned before, so instead of asking an HR business partner a question, you can go right on to the utilize their technology through that company to have all those questions answered by a bot through a language model that they've created, proprietary. So there's definitely companies and software systems, cloud systems nowadays, that are out there that make your job easier as an HR professional across the breadth of all HR skills, right? Not just performance management, but several of the disciplines that are out there. And then what you don't know is out there, go back to ChatGPT and like Megan said, say, hey, I'm having a problem with this part of my job. What's available out there to help me? So, utilizing those large language models to help get those solutions to get you in the right direction. So, but you're really not there by yourself anymore. There's so much technology out there to help you make your job easier while still allowing people to have the option of yourself as the human interaction when needed or oversight.
Mm.
Well, I will say very few things to say because I think we covered a lot of things. The only angle that I would like to add, and it's European angle, it is even if you're a team of one, please be sure that you are aware about the recent legislation on your current environment regarding the application of AI, in particular on the application of AI in HR and eventually performance as well.
Mm.
You can use ChatGPT if you want to do that.
Great call out, and it links with some of the comments in the chat where people raised compliance and risk aspects of this conversation. Now, with only 9 minutes left to go, I am not ready to promise that this is the last question, but let's see. You all mentioned at some point and barely scratched the surface of bringing culture into this conversation. I remember on so many occasions on Hacking HR panels and other conversations, people agreed that performance management is one of the strongest cultural statements in an organization because it tells people what matters, what is valued, and how we are going to measure and reward and discourage as appropriate. So I have no particular agenda in mind behind this question, but I would invite you to share how would you link everything that we discussed here today to culture? Is there a certain question that you carry in your mind? Is there a particular cultural requirement in an organization that brings AI into performance management? So I guess the question is, how do you link this with culture in maybe one reflection? And how should we go? Let's go from Jason counterclockwise. So Jason and then Megan.
Well, I think there is different adoptions when it comes to AI in different cultures, right? There is different expectations, and I'll admit I'm not the most educated when it comes to all the different cultures out there and what those needs might be, but there definitely has been differences. But again, there's also the advantages of using it. So maybe it's not as broadly used. Maybe it's more narrow in its use, but coming from a country that is very diverse, obviously the United States, the adoption has been very wide, and it's being used from many different cultural ways to tie different cultures together within a company, within the international footprint of the companies that operate out of the U.S. So I know it's a very generic answer. I wish it was better. Not one of my best answers for sure.
I love the angle with national cultures being brought together under the umbrella. So thank you.
Real quick, what I would say is you could just like, again, you could type in something, develop this plan to enjoy celebrating cultural awareness within a company, and here's my diverse breakdown within my company. So again, it is as simple as that, but again, process-wise, it's different. So.
Thank you, Megan.
Fabulous answer, Jason. Thinking about organizational culture and how to connect that to AI, what comes to mind for me is within an organization, just having the conversation around like, what is our tolerance or interest, comfort level around experimentation, right? Like, I think that's an overarching theme of today's conversation, right? Like, there's a lot of tools that are on the marketplace, new ones coming each and every day, but it really requires, where are we as a company willing to experiment versus where do we need to have it be 100% buttoned up and be a little more certain? And so just from a culture around experimentation, do we have more ability to experiment in talent acquisition versus learning and development versus performance management? And so that would be how I would thread the organizational culture and AI together.
Thank you. Didier.
I will say that AI is just an amplificator of the culture. It's almost a leverage or two additional tools that will multiply the effect of culture. If, for example, we have, and I will give you two examples actually. So if we have a culture where it's more up or out, eventually AI will help identify the talent faster and eventually the low performer faster. On the opposite, if we have an organization who have a culture where learning, failure, it's more allowed than usual, then essentially indeed this kind of tool can be helpful in order to propose and design some personalized plan. So in a nutshell, clearly for me, it's an amplificator. It's a length on the DNA of the organization, and it would be a translation actually of a key value of the organization in the way that is implemented.
Yeah, I really like that. I think I agree with you, Didier. I think it can be the glue to link the cultural vision, which is our cultural statement or our ambition, cultural ambition, to the cultural reality, especially when you have high diversity. When you have a lot of diversity, and you can have perhaps a predominant kind of narrative or the ways we did things around here, especially when you're trying to drive change and drive transformation. We're in a period of change. So, Megan was talking about that. How do you drive the culture to keep your organization competitive? Because performance is about being able to remain competitive as the market changes and evolves. So I think it can act as that glue. It's very hard to deliver a cultural vision, and you can end up with a culture on the surface and a culture in the trenches. And I think being able to break through that through this kind of mass analysis of like lots of different things. So for example, we look at we use call bots in our meetings to generate notes for us, for example. And in my product and engineering team, we're looking at, okay, what happens if we run these past the sort of a Scrum best practice to see if we're doing meetings well? Are we setting an agenda at every meeting? Are we agreeing action points? And that gives us insights into that on a daily basis. And you see, okay, hang on, we're not being very clear setting agendas, and that's not very good because we talk about that as an important thing, but we're not putting as much into practice as we want. So we can be that kind of self-reflection. I think it links really well with everything that we're talking about, the kind of real-time feedback, the self-reflection, which drives change. Because if you get feedback every 3 months or 6 months, it's too long. You don't apply it the next day, or maybe apply it the next week, but then you move off again. So I think that's where I think we can get a more like a one culture that is more transparent.
Thank you so very much for being here today. And I know we have 2 more days left of October, but I am taking a calculated risk here and say that this is an absolute highlight of the month for me, just sitting in the front row and listening to you. I will squeeze one more question and I will try to speak very fast. If you were to sum up the value of a high-performing organization with AI in one word, what would that value be? I will give you a few seconds to think about, just enough to thank everybody in the audience for taking the time and the curiosity to be here, thanking Jessa for taking such good care of us as always, and encouraging you to stay tuned tomorrow for a wonderful conversation on assessing skills using AI. So, the value of creating a high-performing organization with AI, and we will finish as we started, clockwise. Fabrizio, if you're ready, one word. What's your one word for today?
One word is very hard. I think I'll stick with curiosity. I think that's what's going to make the difference.
Curiosity. Thank you. Didier.
Self-reflection.
Thank you. Jason. You're on mute, so you got us all very curious.
Adaptability.
Adaptability. Thank you. And Megan.
Engagement.
Megan, Jason, Didier, and Fabrizio, wonderful having you here. I hope I will get to welcome you on my screen again very, very soon. And as I keep telling people that I work with, stay curious, not furious. Thank you very much for being here. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.